What if everything you thought you knew about money, about success and how to actually achieve it, was only like half the story? What if the path to financial freedom wasn't just about the numbers on a spreadsheet, but something far deeper, something that lives inside all of us, guiding our choices, often without us even realizing it? Welcome to Book Talk Finance. Today, we're diving into a true book site, kind of a clash of titans in the world of personal finance. On one side, we have the raw, no-nonsense, action-oriented strategy of Dave Ramsey's The Total Money Makeover. Very direct. And in the opposing corner, we're unpacking the more nuanced behavioral insights from Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money. This discussion isn't just about comparing two books, though. It's really about exploring a fundamental tension in personal finance. Is financial success more about disciplined, almost rigid rules? Or is it about a profound, compassionate self-awareness of our own behavior? Is it the tactical execution? Or is it really the mental game? So let's unpack this. These two incredibly popular books, right?
Both aimed at helping you achieve financial success, but they come from fundamentally different starting points. It's fascinating. One is championing this strict, almost military-like adherence to a predefined plan. You follow the steps, period. And the other is suggesting that money success is less about what you know, your financial literacy, your IQ, and far, far more about how you actually behave. It's a pretty stark dichotomy, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And what's fascinating here is how these two perspectives, they really highlight different yet equally crucial facets of human nature and money. Ramsey, right out of the gate, he posits that winning at money is 80% behavior and 20% head knowledge. Now, this isn't just a catchy phrase for him. It's the absolute bedrock of his entire philosophy. It underpins everything. He's essentially arguing that the plan itself and the unwavering discipline to follow it, that's paramount. He implies pretty strongly that if even a moron walking would be wealthy by diligently following his steps, then any lack of success isn't due to the plan's complexity. No, it's a direct problem with you and your behavior, your choices.
Yeah, that 80% behavior, 20% head knowledge line. It really underscores Ramsey's whole approach, doesn't it? He's not telling you to go get a PhD in economics or, master complex algorithms. He's telling you to fundamentally change your habits, your actions. It's all about what you do. And he speaks from a place that's deeply personal and, frankly, very relatable for a lot of people. Ramsey himself went broke twice, right? Even after becoming a millionaire, lost everything. He claims his proven plan, and he calls it that works every single time because it's simple, it's actionable, and it directly confronts what he sees as the heart of your money problems.
Okay.
He explicitly rejects what he calls intricate academic theories that don't work in the real world because, he found his own hard-won path to success through a different, far more practical route. His own experience is key.
Exactly. And Ramsey is quite blunt, almost confrontational, about the catalyst for genuine change. You feel it when you read him. He often points out that people won't truly change until the pain of where they are exceeds the pain of change. That's a core idea for him. He uses this compelling, almost stark story about a couple named Sarah and John. They appeared financially fine on the surface, looked well off, but they were living in what he calls financial denial. They had the big house payments, fat car payments, bloated credit cards, and anorexic savings. A true picture of financial fat, as he puts it. It took a crisis, a job loss, for them to finally look in the financial mirror and acknowledge their situation. He really emphasizes that moment of painful truth. He challenges listeners directly. If you keep doing the same things, you will keep getting the same results. He wants you to feel that pain, or at least acknowledge it deeply, to motivate that radical, often uncomfortable shift in behavior.
And he doesn't pull any punches when he talks about why people struggle financially. He attributes a lot of it to what he calls ignorance. Not necessarily a lack of intelligence, mind you, but simply not knowing the truth about money. And also these culturally accepted myths, things like debt being a useful tool, or that pervasive idea that you absolutely need credit cards to build credit or just function in modern society. He aggressively debunks these, often using strong, memorable words like dumb or stupid. He really goes after these ideas. He'll provocatively ask things like, if you loan your brother-in-law $100 and he never speaks to you again, was it worth the investment? Kind of puts things in perspective, right? And he's particularly harsh on co-signing, calls it a curse on relationships, pointing out that banks only ask for co-signers because, they don't expect the primary borrower to pay. He shares the story of a client, Kevin, whose life was really upended when a co-signed car loan impacted his mortgage application years later. It's a very direct, almost jolting style. It feels like it's designed to shock you out of what he sees as complacency and cultural indoctrination.
Now, when we shift to Morgan Housel, it's like we're putting on completely different glasses to look at this whole financial landscape. Housel argues that finance isn't like physics. It's not governed by immutable, predictable laws that apply equally to everyone, everywhere. Instead, he says it's guided by people's behaviors. And this is a crucial distinction, really fundamental. What might seem crazy or utterly irrational to one person, Housel suggests, can make perfect sense to another. Why? Because everyone has their own unique experience with how the world works. It's less about finding universal code rules and far more about understanding individual context, emotions, and, importantly, personal history.
That's a truly powerful distinction. And Housel kicks off his book with this anecdote that immediately hammers this point home. It's unforgettable. He talks about the brilliant tech executive who went bankrupt versus Ronald Reed, the humble janitor who died a millionaire. The tech executive, a genius with patents, clearly smart, managed to lose everything. Reed, this quiet, unassuming janitor, accumulated an $8 million fortune simply and steadily over decades. Housel's conclusion is stark, and it really cuts through a lot of our preconceptions about intelligence and money. He says, "A genius who loses control of their emotions can be a financial disaster. The opposite is also true. Ordinary folks with no financial education can be wealthy if they have a handful of behavioral skills that have nothing to do with formal measures of intelligence." So are you saying Housel thinks it's really about managing yourself, your impulses, maybe more than managing the actual numbers?
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. Housel emphasizes that our views on money are heavily, heavily anchored to our personal experiences, particularly those formative ones early in our adult lives. He notes that these experiences, even though they represent a minuscule fraction of global history, he uses the figure 0.000000001% of what's happened in the world can disproportionately account for approximately 80% of how you think the world works. It's wild when you think about it. He cites the lasting, profound impact of the Great Depression on those who lived through it. It shaped their views on debt and savings for their entire lives. And similarly, how growing up with high inflation or maybe a consistently strong stock market shapes lifetime investment decisions in completely different ways. This, for Housel, explains why equally intelligent people can disagree so profoundly on financial matters. It's not about intelligence or education or even sophistication. It's often about the dumb luck of when and where you were born and the unique economic environment you grew up in, your personal slice of history.
That's fascinating. So Housel isn't just talking about what we do with money. He's diving deep into the why, the deeper, often subconscious reasoning behind behaviors that seem irrational on the surface. For instance, his analysis of why lower-income individuals spend money on lottery tickets, while Ramsey might dismiss it as stupid or just bad math.
Right, a waste of money.
Housel offers a profoundly different and I think more empathetic explanation. He says, buying a lottery ticket is the only time in our lives we can hold a tangible dream of getting the good stuff that you already have and take for granted. We are paying for a dream, and you may not understand that because you are already living a dream. Wow. That's a crucial distinction, isn't it?
Yeah.
It suggests that what looks stupid to one person can actually be a deeply meaningful emotional purchase for another. It's about perspective.
And that leads directly into Housel's distinction between hidden wealth and visible richness. This is another key concept. He argues that people generally want to be wealthy, which he defines basically as possessing freedom, flexibility, and unspent assets, the stuff money can buy that isn't things. But at the same time, we are powerfully influenced by richness, which is all about visible, ostentatious spending, the fancy cars, the big houses. The paradox is that true wealth is often hidden. Think about Ronald Reed, the janitor. His life looked modest. This makes wealth inherently difficult to learn from or imitate because, well, you can't see it. In contrast, visible spending, that relentless drive of keeping up with the Joneses, is easily seen, it's admired, sometimes envied. But it often leads to financial strain and, ironically, the exact opposite of wealth. It prevents wealth accumulation. Housel points out that societies shift post-World War II towards a culture of consumption, and, importantly, readily available consumer debt has further entrenched this desire for visible richness, kind of inflating aspirations regardless of actual income.
Okay, so on one hand, we have this almost spiritual zeal from Ramsey for a fixed, proven path to financial health, complete with clear-cut rules and, frankly, dire warnings if you stray. And on the other hand, with Housel, we have this deep dive into the unpredictable human mind, its history, its biases, its profound emotional drivers. It's less about the path, more about the traveler. This sets up a truly fascinating tension, especially when we start thinking about how these different approaches tackle the actual messy financial challenges that real people face every single day.
Yeah, and Ramsey offers a very specific sequential system. It's designed to guide you from financial struggle to stability and ultimately to wealth. That's the promise. It's built on immediate action, clear targets, and really celebrating those small wins to build psychological momentum. And a huge part of it is prioritizing debt elimination above almost all else. He calls them the baby steps, and they are absolutely the backbone of his entire total money makeover philosophy.
The idea of baby steps is interesting. It actually comes from that movie, What About Bob? Remember that? Where the therapist writes a book by that title. Ramsey borrows it to emphasize doing things one little step at a time, which helps avoid being completely overwhelmed and frustrated by, the sheer enormity of the financial mountain you might be facing.
Yeah.
He's a huge proponent of what he calls the power of focus. He argues that if you try to do everything at once, like, say, putting a little bit extra into your 401k, paying an extra $50 on your house, and maybe an extra $5 on a credit card.
Spreading yourself thin.
Exactly. You dilute your efforts. You don't finish anything quickly, which makes you feel like you're accomplishing nothing, and that leads to a profound loss of motivation. You just give up. Instead, focusing laser-like on one step at a time provides actual visible progress. And that, for Ramsey, is the crucial key to sustained change. Seeing results quickly matters.
His very first baby step is to save $1,000 cash. Just $1,000 as a starter emergency fund. He famously calls this Murphy repellent. Murphy's law, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. His reasoning is simple. He's positive. It is going to rain, so you need a rainy day fund. Pretty straightforward. Now, this fund is strictly for unexpected emergencies, a car repair, a sudden medical bill. It's not for poor planning. Christmas, he always says, is not an emergency. It comes every year. The reason this comes first, even before aggressive debt payoff, is actually crucial to his plan's success, based on his experience. Ramsey learned that if people started paying off debt immediately, even a small emergency, like a $400 car repair, would often force them back into debt. They'd feel like a failure, and then they'd abandon their entire makeover. So the $1,000 provides that initial buffer, that psychological safety net. He encourages people to get crazy to achieve this quickly, ideally in less than a month, work extra hours, sell stuff you don't need, hold garage sales, whatever it takes. This is the first weird step, he says, that immediately separates you from the Joneses, who are living paycheck to paycheck with no cushion. He recounts this really inspiring story of Lily, a single mom with 2 kids, struggling on just $1,200 a month. Saving her first $500 wasn't just money in the bank. It provided her with hope and a sense of power over her finances for the very first time in her adult life. That's the power of step 1.
Then comes baby step 2. The debt snowball. This is arguably his most famous strategy, maybe the most controversial too, and where that behavior over math principle really shines. You list all your debts, everything except the house, from the smallest payoff or balance first. Smallest balance at the top, largest at the bottom, regardless of the interest rate. That's key. You pay minimums on all of them except the smallest one. Then you attack that smallest debt with what he calls gazelle intensity until it's completely gone. Once that debt is paid off, you feel that when you take the money you were paying on it, the minimum payment plus any extra you were throwing at it, and you roll it into the payment for the next smallest debt. This creates a snowball effect. The payment amount grows larger and faster as you knock out each debt, gathering psychological momentum along the way.
And this is where his behavior over math principle truly shines, as you said. It's explicit. Ramsey readily admits, that the debt snowball is not mathematically optimal. Paying off the highest interest rate first would save you more money in interest over time. The math nerds hate the snowball. But for him, that's beside the point. It's designed purely for motivation and behavior modification. That's the whole game. The quick wins of paying off those small debts provide a psychological boost, an attaboy feeling, that sense of actual visible progress that keeps people engaged and sticking with the often painful plan. It builds hope. He calls it dynamiting the logjam, and encourages radical actions like selling assets to eliminate debt faster, especially cars with large payments. He hates car payments. He talks about his own experience driving a Bondo buggy after losing everything, and shares stories of others selling Harleys, boats, or even, precious non-family antiques to get out of debt faster. The gazelle metaphor isn't just catchy. It powerfully emphasizes running from debt, like prey running from a predator. Intense focus, intense speed.
And he's absolutely relentless in debunking what he sees as these common debt myths, those culturally accepted beliefs that keep people stuck in the cycle. He vehemently refutes the idea that debt is a tool for prosperity, calls it academic garbage, that simply doesn't work in the real world for ordinary people. He asserts that debt brings on enough risk to offset any advantage, citing his own bankruptcy as direct, painful proof. It's personal for him. His mantra is clear and biblical. The borrower is slave to the lender. He repeats that often. He considers co-signing stupid.
and a curse on relationships, stating bluntly that banks only ask for cosigners because they don't expect the primary borrower to pay. You're basically guaranteeing someone else's loan. Your credit gets damaged even if the primary borrower is just used late, he points out, and you're still on the hook for the deficit if the asset, like a car, is repossessed and sold for less than the loan balance. He's not subtle, is he? He really wants to shake you awake.
He is anything but subtle, no. And his views extend to all forms of what he considers predatory lending. He goes after them hard. He warns fiercely against trash lenders like payday loans, which he says charge over 650% annual interest on average. And rent to own, with rates over 1,800% interest, just staggering numbers. He highlights how these practices feed on the working poor and often exploit that "I want it now" mentality, trapping them in these endless destructive cycles of debt. He shares this harrowing story of a guy named Mike caught in a cycle of borrowing from one trash lender just to pay another, eventually facing criminal charges for writing bad checks. It's a nightmare scenario. Ramsey says the only way out is to pop the balloon, stop paying them, close the accounts, and work out payment arrangements, which often requires getting extra jobs and selling possessions just to clean up the mess. It's drastic.
And don't even get him started on car payments and leasing. Oh boy. He argues that car payments are one of the dumbest things people do to destroy their chances of building wealth. Strong words. He cites the average car payment, around $495 a month back when he wrote it, and calculates that if you invested that amount from age 25 to 65 at 12% returns, his assumed market average, it could compound to over $5 million. That's the opportunity cost he highlights. Leasing, he claims, is the most expensive way to operate a vehicle. Even at 0% APR deals, he argues the high implicit interest rates baked into the lease and the rapid depreciation mean you're losing huge value without building any equity. He vehemently encourages driving reliable used cars, pointing out that studies show true millionaires often drive modest older cars. They don't flash wealth with new vehicles. After his own bankruptcy, he famously drove a borrowed 400,000-mile Cadillac with a vinyl roof torn loose. He calls it his Bondo buggy, to emphasize the profound personal sacrifice he made. He believes that kind of humility ultimately led to his current financial freedom.
His best myth, as he calls it, the one he really loves to bust, is arguably the idea that you should get a credit card to build your credit. This is a big one for him. Ramsey states unequivocally that a FICO score mathematically says you love debt because it's built entirely on your history of borrowing and repaying debt. It measures your relationship with debt, not your wealth. He contends that living debt-free means you won't need to build credit for things like mortgages. He argues you can get a mortgage if you have lived right by finding lenders who do actual underwriting, looking at your income, assets, and job history instead of relying solely on FICO scores. He points out that his own FICO score is 0, or indeterminate, because he hasn't borrowed money in decades. And he functions just fine. He also argues that debit cards can handle everything credit cards do, renting cars, checking into hotels, online purchases, with the exact same protections that Visa and MasterCard regulations require. The zero liability policies apply. He believes giving a teenager a credit card is akin to giving them alcohol or a loaded weapon with the safety off. He cites statistics like 88% of graduating college seniors having credit card debt before their first job, and a staggering 19% of all bankruptcy filings being by college students. He sees it as setting them up for failure.
He also directly addresses the myth of borrowing on home equity, which he calls the myth of leveraging home equity for investment. People think it's smart, right? Use your house like an ATM. He states that after taxes and considering the risk, you really don't make anything when the smoke clears. And more importantly, it puts your home, often your single largest asset, at great financial risk. He shares a tragic story of Ed and Sally, who lost their home after their home equity line of credit, HEL or HELC, was called during a job loss. Why? Because they had no emergency fund to cover the payments when the bank demanded the money or would sell the line. It's a cautionary tale. And finally, he describes bankruptcy itself as a gut-wrenching, life-changing event that causes lifelong damage, not a simple reset button. He highlights that a Chapter 7 bankruptcy stays on your credit report for 10 years, and questions about past bankruptcies can impact loan applications, insurance rates, and even job applications for life. It follows you. He even mentions a couple he knew who filed 3 times, emphasizing the persistent pain and shame involved. For Ramsey, the goal is avoiding these pitfalls entirely, through strict adherence to his plan. No compromises on debt.
And central to Ramsey's entire control strategy, the engine that makes the baby steps work, is budgeting. He doesn't mince words here. He emphasizes, with that typical blunt force, that you have to tell money what to do or it leaves. Money needs direction. A written zero-based budget where income minus outgo equals exactly zero is not just helpful, it is absolutely essential for achieving financial control in his system. Every dollar has a name. He insists that budgets should be set up every month and done before the month begins because we never have those perfect, predictable months where expenses are exactly the same. Life happens. And for married couples, this is huge for him. Spousal agreement on the budget is absolutely crucial. If you aren't working together, he says, it is almost impossible to win. You're paddling in opposite directions. Couples must agree on the budget, and, as he colorfully puts it, pinky swear and spit shake that you will never do anything with money that is not on that paper. That's commitment. Mid-month adjustments are allowed, things change, but they require agreement between both partners and re-zeroing the budget to maintain control. Communication is key.
Okay, so once you've done the hard work, you're out of consumer debt, baby step 2, and you have that initial $1,000 emergency fund, baby step 1, you move into the later baby steps. These shift the focus from debt elimination to serious wealth building. Baby step 3 is saving a fully funded emergency fund. Now we're talking 3 to 6 months of essential expenses, kept in something safe and liquid like a money market account. How much depends on your risk factors. If you're commission-based, self-employed, or in a single-income household, you probably need closer to 6 months. If you have stable, dual incomes, maybe 3 months is okay. This is described as insurance against rainy days and even more Murphy repellent than step 1. It provides deeper security and peace of mind, protecting your investments later on.
Then King's baby step 4. Invest 15% of your gross household income for retirement. This is where serious wealth building truly begins. He recommends using growth stock mutual funds spread across 4 types: growth and income, growth, aggressive growth, and international. He aims for an average annual return of around 12%. He points to the S&P 500's historical average, which he cites as 11.67% over the last 80-plus years, as supporting data for this expectation, making the case for consistent long-term market investing. Stay the course. And he specifically warns against prioritizing college savings or even aggressively paying off your mortgage over consistently hitting this 15% retirement investing goal at this crucial stage. Retirement comes first after debt freedom and the full emergency fund.
Okay, then baby step 5 focuses on saving for college for the kids. Ramsey is pretty pragmatic here. He emphasizes that college degrees don't automatically guarantee jobs or success in today's world. He encourages practical low debt or no debt strategies. Things like education savings accounts, ESAs, 529 plans, though he advises caution regarding some types and their tax implications, preferring flexibility. He also pushes scholarships, grants, work-study programs, choosing affordable schools, maybe community college first, and exploring programs for underserved areas where the government might pay for school if you commit to working in certain fields or locations afterwards. The absolute goal here is education without the crushing burden of student loan debt. Don't mortgage the kid's future.
And finally, baby step 6 is to pay off the home mortgage early. You take all the extra money you have beyond the 15% for retirement and any college savings and throw it at the mortgage principal. Attack that final debt. This leads to what Ramsey calls the pinnacle point, which is baby step 7. Build wealth and give. This is the ultimate goal where your money works harder than you do. Financial freedom. Ramsey identifies 3 core uses of money at this stage: fund, invest, and give. You've earned the right to enjoy it, keep growing it, and share it. He encourages giving time and money even from the early steps like tithing or charitable giving, instilling a philanthropic mindset throughout the journey. He shares these really inspiring stories, like that of Larry Stewart, the anonymous Kansas City Secret Santa, who famously gave away over $1.3 million, mostly in $100 bills, to random strangers, illustrating the profound impact and joy of generous giving after achieving financial freedom. That's the ultimate reward in his view.
Okay, wow, that's a very clear, very sequential roadmap. Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because we've heard Ramsey give us the precise play-by-play for a financial makeover, right? Step 1, step 2. But Housel, as we discussed, is almost telling us about the entire stadium, the crowd, the weather, the history of the game, and crucially, the intricate psychology of the players themselves. It's a totally different perspective. So the big question becomes, is this deep understanding of human behavior that Housel talks about, is it a prerequisite for effective financial management? Or is it perhaps a result of following a solid plan like Ramsey's? Or maybe does Ramsey's system somehow bypass the need for that deep psychological dive entirely? What do you think?
Housel definitely doesn't offer a step-by-step plan like Ramsey. There are no baby steps in the psychology of money. Instead, he provides this profound framework for understanding the invisible forces, the undercurrents, that shape our financial lives. He delves deeply into how our experiences, our emotions, our inherent biases often drive our money decisions, regardless of what might be considered rational on paper. He underscores the unpredictable nature of human behavior. He explains that our personal experiences, which, remember, might represent only that tiny 0.0000001% of what's happened in the world, actually account for approximately 80% of how we think the world works. It's a huge disconnect. This, he argues, makes it incredibly difficult to truly recreate the raw power of fear and uncertainty just by studying history or reading about past market crashes. You had to live it. The emotional scars, for instance, of living through something like the Great Depression or maybe the hyperinflation in Weimar Germany create a fundamentally different lens through which individuals view money and risk compared to those who haven't experienced such hardships firsthand. Their rationale is different.
So it's not just about what you know, but how your life is shaped your knowing. It's like an unconscious programming running in the background. Housel even goes as far as to say that an individual investor's willingness to bear risk depends on personal history, not necessarily their intelligence or education level. He uses the example of Bill Gross, the famous bond manager. His incredible success in bond investing coincided with this massive generational collapse in interest rates from the early 80s onwards, a huge tailwind. Gross himself admitted he might not be where he is if he'd been born a decade earlier or later. It illustrates how the dumb luck of when and where you were born can significantly influence one's financial views and, frankly, opportunities. Timing matters.
And this further reinforces Housel's core idea that there's no single universal financial behavior. There's no one right way everyone should act. Given vastly different historical experiences like post-World War II Germany or Japan, where savings were wiped out compared to the U.S. experience in the same period, expecting everyone to respond to financial information the same way or trust the same sources of advice is simply unrealistic. It doesn't make sense. Their views on money, on risk, on government were formed in completely different worlds, forged in different fires. So what seems outrageous or irrational to one group might make perfect sense, emotionally and experientially, to another.
This focus on the human element, it leads to some really counterintuitive financial truths from Housel, things that make you stop and think. One of my favorites is his take on compounding. He calls it the shut up and wait principle, which is pretty blunt too in its own way. He points out that Warren Buffett's extraordinary success isn't primarily about being the greatest investor by annual returns. He mentions Jim Simons, the hedge fund manager at Renaissance Technologies, who actually compounded money at an astonishing 66% annually since 1988, compared to Buffett's roughly 22% over his whole career. But the real profound key to Buffett's legendary wealth, House argues, is longevity. It's the fact that he started investing consistently from age 10 to at least age 89. It's the time horizon. Compounding itself, House argues, is counterintuitive because linear thinking is so much more intuitive than exponential thinking. Our brains are wired for simple addition, for step-by-step progress, not for the explosive, almost magical growth of multiplication over decades. So, patient, sustained investing, rather than chasing complex, high-return strategies that might blow up, is the true, quiet engine of wealth.
Just don't interrupt it.
He then argues that survival is the ultimate financial skill, maybe the most important skill. Getting money is one thing, he writes. Keeping it is another. Simple but profound. He illustrates this with the tragic stories of people like Jesse Livermore, a brilliant trader in the early 20th century who made and lost fortunes multiple times, ultimately taking his own life. And Abraham Germansky, a real estate mogul ruined by the 1929 crash, who also ended tragically. Both were incredibly adept at acquiring wealth, but ultimately terrible at retaining it. They couldn't survive the downturns. Housel highlights how successful, long-lasting entities like the venture capital firm Sequoia Capital attribute their decades of success to being constantly afraid of going out of business and never resting on their laurels. This emphasizes the critical importance of caution, avoiding excessive debt, not panicking during downturns, and constantly adapting. It echoes Buffett's own approach, often characterized by what he didn't do. He didn't get carried away with debt, he didn't panic and sell during the multiple recessions he lived through, and he didn't burn himself out chasing unsustainable returns. He just survived and let compounding work.
And this brings us to room for error, which Housel calls one of the most underappreciated forces in finance. It sounds boring, maybe, but he argues it's crucial. It's not just about being conservative, he says. It's about fundamentally increasing your chances of survival by having a buffer, whether that's a frugal budget, flexible thinking, loose timelines for your goals, or just holding more cash than seems strictly necessary. It allows you to endure a range of potential outcomes. And crucially, it ensured you stick around long enough to let the odds of benefiting from a low probability, high payoff outcome fall in your favor. Like surviving long enough for compounding to really take off. It's about planning on your plan, not going according to plan, isn't it? Because life inevitably throws curveballs that no spreadsheet can predict. Sounds like Housel was advocating for resilience, maybe even a certain humility, as much as he's advocating for financial acumen.
Absolutely. Resilience and humility are huge themes. Housel also delves into the price of success and its hidden costs. Because nothing is free, he contends that nothing worthwhile is free. Investing, for example, has a price that isn't just dollars and cents or fees. It's paid in volatility, fear, doubt, uncertainty, and regret. That's the emotional toll. Trying to avoid this inherent price, perhaps through constant market timing or desperately searching for a perfectly safe investment that also offers high returns, which doesn't exist, often leads to paying double in the form of lost opportunities or higher fees for perceived safety. He uses the powerful examples of Netflix and Monster Beverage stock. Both delivered absolutely massive, life-changing returns over the long run. But, he points out, investors in these stocks endured periods where the stock was below its previous all-time high 94 or 95% of the time. That powerfully demonstrates the constant discomfort, the gut-wrenching volatility, the emotional toll required to reap those incredible long-term rewards. You had to pay the price of admission, which was uncertainty and doubt, almost daily.
And this leads into a really important distinction for Housel. The difference between rational and reasonable financial decisions. This is subtle but key. He acknowledges that technically rational financial advice, based purely on spreadsheets and probabilities, can sometimes be absurdly unreasonable in real life. Like maybe the advice for a young investor to take extreme leverage because mathematically, even if they get wiped out, they have decades to recover and the potential long-term returns are higher. That might be rational on paper.
But crazy in reality.
Exactly. Because, as Housel so bluntly puts it, people are screwed up, emotional. We aren't robots optimizing equations. So he argues for reasonable decisions, choices that account for human psychology, our need for sleep at night, our emotional well-being, even if they aren't perfectly optimal on paper. For instance, he discusses home bias in investing, why people invest disproportionately in their home country's stocks, even though global diversification is technically more rational. It feels safer, more familiar. Or his own personal choice, which he shares, to pay off his mortgage early, despite having a very low interest rate. He admits it was probably financially wrong in terms of pure mathematical return. He could have earned more investing the money. But the independent feeling, the peace of mind he got from being mortgage-free, far exceeds the known financial gain for him. So it sounds like he's saying peace of mind, that feeling of control, can actually be more valuable than squeezing out a few extra percentage points of return. It's a different kind of dividend.
Indeed. It's about optimizing for your life, not just your spreadsheet. He also touches on the fascinating concept of changing future selves. He states quite starkly that people are poor forecasters of their future selves. We think we know what we'll want in 10, 20, 30 years, but we're usually wrong. Our goals, our priorities, our values, they all change over time, often in unpredictable ways. And sunk costs, that tendency to anchor our current decisions to past efforts or investments, even if they no longer make sense, can make our future selves prisoners to our past different selves. We stick with things just because we started them. He believes embracing the idea that financial goals made when you are a different person should be abandoned without mercy, can minimize future regret, and allow for far greater adaptability in a life that will undoubtedly shift and evolve. It's a powerful call for self-compassion and the flexibility to change course. Don't be trapped by who you used to be.
That's a profound point. It suggests a certain humility about our own foresight, doesn't it? We can't perfectly predict our future happiness. Housel further explores the power of stories and optimism. This is fascinating. He argues that stories are by far the most powerful force in the economy, far more impactful than raw data or statistics. He illustrates this brilliantly by asking us to imagine an alien observing New York City between, say, 2007 and 2009. The alien would see the same lights, billboards, people commuting. The tangible economy might look similar or even slightly better with the emergence of things like smartphones. But what fundamentally changed between those 2 points wasn't the physical stuff. It was the stories we told ourselves about the economy. In 2007, we believed in stable housing prices and prudent bankers. And in 2009, we stopped believing that story. That seismic shift in narrative and belief made all the difference, leading to defaults, reduced lending, mass layoffs, and a deep, painful recession. The story changed reality. We're also, he points out, much more likely to believe a story that confirms what we want to be true, regardless of the underlying facts. Confirmation bias is powerful.
And Housel points out another fascinating human bias. Pessimism sounds smarter. Think about it. Pessimism often comes across as more sophisticated, more realistic. It's intellectually captivating and gets paid more attention, often perceived as sage wisdom, while optimism can be easily dismissed as naive or even foolishly Pollyanna-ish. However, Housel argues for what he calls real optimism, which isn't blind faith, but a belief that the odds of a good outcome are in your favor over time, even when there will be setbacks along the way. And there will be setbacks. He notes that progress, especially economic progress, is often too slow to notice, happening incrementally over long periods, while setbacks like market crashes or recessions are too quick to ignore, grabbing headlines and sticking in our memory. This imbalance fuels pessimism's appeal. He uses the historical example of the oil crisis in the 70s, where dire predictions were made about running out of oil, resource depletion, the end of growth. But human adaptation, technological innovation, and market incentives led to dramatically increased oil production and efficiency. Problems create solutions. Threats, he contends, incentivize solutions in equal magnitude, which is a powerful argument for maintaining long-term faith in human ingenuity and progress, despite the constant drumbeat of bad news.
He also powerfully debunks the historians as prophets fallacy. This is the idea that we can perfectly predict the future just by looking at past data. This, Housel argues, is dangerous because of structural changes and genuine surprises that make the present profoundly different from the past in ways data can't capture. Things like 401ks and Roth IRAs are relatively new inventions in the long arc of financial history. Venture capital as a major force barely existed a couple of generations ago. The way companies are funded, the way people save for retirement, the global interconnectedness, it has all changed fundamentally. So while history is invaluable for calibrating expectations and understanding patterns of human behavior, the idea that it's different this time is often true in important ways. Historical data alone can't predict the next black swan event or paradigm shift, forcing us to constantly reevaluate and remain adaptable.
Finally, Housel highlights the profound, often overlooked value of control and unearmarked savings. This is really about the purpose of money. He calls the ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want, the highest dividend money pays. That autonomy, that control over your own time and life decisions. This control, Housel argues, is often more important for genuine happiness than a higher salary, a larger house, or even a prestigious job title. It's about freedom. And related to this, he champions saving without a reason, not just saving for specific earmarked goals like a down payment or retirement, but building up savings just because, for the unexpected. He calls this buffer the financial equivalent of field mice, a hedge against life's inevitable ability to surprise the hell out of you at the worst possible moment. Because surprises will happen. This kind of unearmarked saving also fundamentally aids compounding, he notes, by reducing the need to sell investments at inopportune times to cover unaccepted expenses. It avoids unnecessarily interrupting that quiet, powerful magic of long-term growth. It provides staying power.
Okay, so let's try to bring this all together. On one side, we have Ramsey saying essentially, here's the financial mountain, here's the explicit discipline map, and here's exactly how to climb it. One baby step at a time. Follow the map. On the other side, we have Housel saying, look, you need to understand the mountain, its history, its weather patterns. But more importantly, understand yourself, your biases, your emotions, your past experiences, and know that the mountain itself might change, and your emotional reaction to it is paramount. It's less map, more compass, and self-awareness. The big question then, the core of this book fight, is which approach is more effective? Or maybe, can they perhaps work together? Is there synergy?
This truly raises important questions about the fundamental nature of financial success, doesn't it? Is it about strict, unwavering adherence to a predefined plan, or is it about cultivating a resilient, adaptable psychological approach? Let's tackle these directly. First, is financial success more about understanding your own psychological quirks or following a strict, disciplined plan? Ramsey's view is undeniably clear here. It's primarily about the plan and the discipline. His baby steps are explicitly designed to enforce good behavior, even if the math isn't perfectly optimized like we saw with the debt snowball. The behavior change comes from the doing. He believes that the sheer pain of change, that moment of hitting rock bottom or facing the truth, forces a new mindset. His program implicitly acknowledges those psychological quirks, I think, but it primarily counters them with rigid rules and clear, non-negotiable actions. It almost tries to bypass the need for deep introspection by just giving you the what.
Right. And Housel, on the other hand, would argue it's fundamentally about behavior and psychology driving everything. He'd contend that without understanding your own biases, your historical context, your emotional triggers around money, Even the best, most mathematically perfect plan can ultimately fail. You'll sabotage it. In fact, he might even suggest that the total money makeover is effective because it structures the baby steps. The debt snowball subtly taps into universal psychological needs. Things like the need for quick wins to stay motivated, or the deep desire for control and peace of mind that comes from having an emergency fund. He might say those behavioral elements are what make it work for people, perhaps even more than the specific financial mechanics. Remember his own choice to pay off his mortgage early. While financially wrong by strict rational measures, it was for him psychologically reasonable because it provided that invaluable sense of independence and peace. He optimized for feeling good.
So the synthesis really seems to be that Ramsey provides the clear, what to do, the tactical execution plan, especially for getting out of a mess. And Housel provides the deep why it's hard and why it's important to adapt your mindset for the long haul. One focuses on external rules to shape behavior. The other focuses on internal understanding to guide behavior. For many people, especially when they're feeling overwhelmed by debt or lack discipline, a structured, almost prescriptive plan like Ramsey's might be the necessary external force. It overrides those ingrained, often self-sabotaging behaviors by just telling them exactly what to do next. While Housel, in turn, explains why those ingrained behaviors exist in the first place and why Persistence Housel's shut up and wait principle for investing is so powerfully effective, requiring emotional endurance.
That leads perfectly to our next big question. Can Housel's insights actually help you stick to Ramsey's plan? Or does Ramsey's plan, by its nature, kind of bypass the need for that deep psychological understanding Housel talks about? And I think there's absolutely a powerful synergy here. It feels like a both-hand situation, not either. Housel's insights can immensely help you stick to Ramsey's sometimes difficult plan. For example, understanding the pain of change that Ramsey highlights is profoundly deepened by Housel's point about fighting fevers. Remember, people fight fevers because they hurt, even though the fever itself could be beneficial to health, fighting infection. Financial discipline, like getting out of debt or cutting spending, it hurts in the short term. Housel helps you understand why that visceral resistance occurs, why it feels bad, which can make you more prepared psychologically to push through it and stick with the plan.
Absolutely. And think about the debt snowball. Its focus on small, rapid wins, a core Ramsey principle, is a direct, even if maybe unstated by Ramsey, application of behavioral psychology. Housel would explain precisely why that immediate feedback loop, the quick thrill of paying off that smallest debt, is so motivating and powerful for humans, even if the interest savings aren't mathematically maximized. It's the psychological gratification that keeps you going when things get tough. Similarly, Housel's emphasis on having room for error and saving without a reason directly reinforces and provides a deeper rationale for Ramsey's emergency fund concept. Housel explains its psychological benefit goes beyond just covering expenses. It's Murphy repellent, yes, but it also protects against the unexpected, hitting your long-term goals, giving you that profound peace of mind that helps you stay the course. It prevents panic selling of investments, for example. It avoids derailing the whole plan due to life's inevitable curveballs.
And Housel's discussion of keeping up with the Joneses, providing that historical and psychological context, tracing it back to post-WWII shifts in consumer culture, readily available debt, and growing wealth inequality, making aspirational lifestyles seem both desirable and attainable, often falsely, through credit. Understanding that why provides a deep underpinning for resisting one of Ramsey's major hurdles to financial freedom. Knowing why you feel that compelling social pressure to buy new cars or constantly upgrade your lifestyle using credit can actually strengthen your resolve to resist those external pressures and stick to Ramsey's debt-free path. You're not just fighting your desires, you're understanding the societal and psychological forces shaping them.
However, to play devil's advocate for a moment, Ramsey himself might argue, and probably would argue, that his plan bypasses the need for all that deep psychological understanding. He might say, just do the steps. For him, you don't need to spend hours analyzing why you're bad with money. You just need to stop the bad behavior and follow the proven steps. His repeated emphasis on, this plan works, and the somewhat harsh, you are the problem framing suggests less need for introspection and more need for immediate, decisive action. For some personalities, that directness, that lack of ambiguity, is exactly what they need to get started.
So, thinking about those different needs, which approach do you think is more sustainable long-term? Maybe for different personality types. Let's take a scenario. Imagine someone comes to you, they're feeling totally overwhelmed by debt, maybe they know they're prone to impulsive spending, and they really struggle with self-discipline. Where would you suggest they start, and how might these two philosophies guide them differently?
Okay, for that person, someone who maybe thrives on clear rules, needs that rigid structure, perhaps benefits from external accountability. Ramsey's baby steps offer immense, almost immediate sustainability, especially in the beginning. The system provides constant, clear goal setting and tangible achievements, which can be highly motivating, especially with the immediate gratification built into the debt snowball. You see progress quickly. The communal aspect, too, things like his financial peace university classes, the radio show call ins, the numerous success stories he shares, all that reinforces adherence and provides a strong support system. You don't feel alone. The pain of change that Ramsey emphasizes for this personality type can be the necessary shock to the system that propels them into action and keeps them going. However, the potential weakness for long-term sustainability might be if life throws a major curveball that isn't explicitly covered by the plan, or if the individual eventually chafes under the somewhat rigid and sometimes dogmatic nature of the rules. At that point, it might break down unless they can adapt. They might then need to layer in some of Housel's insights about flexibility and resilience to navigate those unexpected challenges or feelings of restriction.
Okay, and conversely, what about someone different? Maybe someone who is more reflective, perhaps more analytical. Maybe they're already a bit financially literate, they kind of know what they should be doing, but they feel this disconnect between that knowledge and their actual behavior. Or maybe they're just inherently skeptical of rigid, one-size-fits-all systems. How would House's framework guide them towards sustainability?
Right. For that type of person, Housel's framework offers a different path to sustainability, one that's perhaps more adaptable and internal. Understanding the profound power of compounding over decades, accepting volatility not as a failure, but as an unavoidable fee you pay for long-term returns, truly valuing control over time as the ultimate financial dividend, and embracing the reality that your future selves will change all this allows for a much more flexible and psychologically resilient financial plan. This approach might be more sustainable long-term for those who prefer principles over strict rules and who are comfortable with ambiguity and self-correction. They can adapt when life's inevitable surprises occur because they understand the underlying dynamics. Housel's concept of not interrupting compounding unnecessarily becomes a guiding principle, suggesting a mindset that avoids impulsive actions driven by fear or greed because they understand the deeper psychological forces that might prompt those actions. So yeah, it feels like Ramsey likely appeals more to those who need clear boundaries, external structure, and quick, tangible wins to get started and stay motivated. While Housel resonates more with those who are perhaps more reflective, analytical, comfortable with nuance, and see the bigger picture of human financial behavior, aiming to work with their psychology rather than strictly against it.
This brings us to the final big comparison point. Is one book clearly superior for tackling debt versus building long-term wealth? Where do their strengths really lie? From everything we've discussed, it seems pretty clear that Ramsey's The Total Money Makeover is arguably superior, maybe even purpose-built, for tackling debt, especially consumer debt, getting out of the hole. The debt snowball is specifically designed for this purpose, focusing laser-like on the psychological momentum needed to eliminate consumer debt rapidly and stay motivated while doing it. His strict, almost zero-tolerance rules against all forms of debt, credit cards, car payments, payday loans, borrowing from family, create an urgent, focused attack plan. And his personal experiences, having gone broke twice due to debt himself, lend a powerful, raw credibility to his debt-free message. It resonates deeply with those who feel trapped by payments and need a clear, actionable escape route. He's been there.
I agree, but then when it comes to building long-term wealth, both books offer critical components, just from fundamentally different angles. Ramsey provides the practical, actionable steps. Save that fully funded emergency fund, step 3. Consistently invest 15% of your income for retirement in those growth stock mutual funds, step 4. Save for college without debt, step 5. And eventually, pay off the mortgage, step 6. It's a sequence. He promotes consistent, long-term growth, citing historical stock market averages around 12%, though maybe that's optimistic now, as a benchmark. And he defines retirement not just as quitting a job you hate, but having profound choices and security. Financial peace. The pinnacle point in his plan, Baby Step 7, is that ultimate goal of having your money work harder than you do, giving you the freedom to live, invest more, and give generously. He provides the how-to.
But Housel, he provides the essential mindset for enduring the long-term wealth-building journey. It's the crucial internal game, the psychology needed to actually stick with it for decades. His emphasis on compounding and the immense importance of longevity, just staying invested, the absolute necessity of survival over maximizing short-term returns, having ample room for error in your financial planning, accepting volatility as that unavoidable fee of long-term investing, and understanding the hidden, often counterintuitive nature of true wealth. These are all crucial psychological skills for sustaining wealth over decades through booms and busts. He highlights that true success is exiting some rat race to modulate one's activities for peace of mind. It's about using money to buy control and freedom. He notes that owning assets for that freedom and flexibility can be far more valuable than simply chasing the theoretically optimal returns on paper. And he also points out the insidious danger of getting the goalpost to stop moving, that lifestyle creep where your spending rises to meet or exceed your income, which is a constant subtle threat to long-term financial health. It subtly erodes wealth accumulation from the inside out, preventing you from ever feeling like you have enough.
So in essence, they offer profoundly complementary strengths, don't they? It's not really a versus, maybe it's a partnership. Ramsey is like the direct, empowering guide, maybe the drill sergeant you need, who helps you get out of the financial hole and establish those foundational habits for budgeting, saving, and getting debt-free. He builds the solid structure. Housel, in turn, is like the wise mentor who helps you stay out of the hole and build robust, truly sustainable wealth over the long run. He does this by providing that deep understanding of the psychological landscape of money, enabling you to navigate your own emotions and adapt to an unpredictable future. He reminds you of the hidden non-monetary dividends of financial wisdom, control, peace, freedom.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? It seems clear this isn't really an either situation, but perhaps a powerful bow hand. Maybe you need different books at different stages of your journey. Ramsey gives you the structure, the clear steps, and that initial, often painful but necessary, push to break free from debt and build foundational habits. Get the mechanics right. And Housel gives you the understanding of the deep human currents, those invisible psychological forces that will constantly test that structure and test you over a lifetime of saving, investing, and living with money. Understand the player. The true power, then, maybe lies not just in knowing the steps, but in understanding the human spirit that must walk them, knowing when to adhere rigidly to the plan and when to adapt with compassionate self-awareness informed by Housel's wisdom. Could it be that the most successful financial makeover isn't about choosing one philosophy over the other, but one that leverages a strong, clear plan like Ramsey's, armed with a deep, nuanced, and forgiving understanding of ourselves and the complex world around us, like Housel provides? Which philosophy resonates most with you right now? Or do you now see a powerful, perhaps unexpected synergy between these two seemingly opposing titans? We hope this Book Talk Deep Dive has given you plenty to think about and maybe some new tools for your own unique financial journey.